it before the traffic gets
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate it. Welcome to Five Towns College Women in Industry panel. Thank you guys all for coming. And this first panel today is about arts production, film, and theater specifically. So if you ladies wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves, telling us your name is, where you work. Maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. Hello. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Rosalind Murphy. I'm a media consultant and also a producer. And so I work with specifically like theater, film, and art organizations in doing marketing.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Eminger. I am a freelance theater director and I also teach and direct at Five Towns College.
And I'm Tiffany Jackman. I'm a producer-director. I work on different TV shows and films, and I also teach at New York City College of Technology. I teach intro to film there.
That's great.
Yes.
So I'm not really moderating. I'm just here, just because I'm a slow looker apparently. But this is Crystal, and she is going to please give Crystal a hand, everybody. So I'm going to jump in a little bit here and there, but Crystal, feel free, go right ahead.
So my first question is, what was your first job in the industry, and when did you know that this was what you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Okay. I'm pausing because I actually started off my career started off in corporate America, but I love film and I used to go to film festivals and I just happened to have a lot of friends who were at NYU. So for me, I used to be a PA on their sets, I've done script supervising, and I just was helping out my friends, but I was also in love with that. But I met actually my first client through New York Women in Film Television, Nine With. And so we did I'm a marketer, so I helped with the crowdfunding campaign. We did Kickstarter, and so that was like my first gig, actually really working as a marketer.
I started my directing career as an actor. I think a lot of people from my industry do that because it's a way in when you're younger. So I was in college, I was in undergrad for acting, and there was an opportunity to direct some student shows, and I fell in love with it then. And since then, I made the choice to pursue it as a career, and that has manifested in various ways. A lot of it has been, especially in the beginning, working with friends and making something happen from the ground up, creating my own company of people to direct with.
So I first, I think, fell in love with filmmaking when I was about 12 years old. That's when I bought my first camera. Before then, I went to this small private school down in Atlanta, and what we had to do was every week one class performed for the rest of the school, and that class had to write a play and perform it. And so I wrote the play for my class when I was probably in 6th grade or 5th grade or something like that. And then everybody enjoyed the play so much that I started writing it for the rest of the classes for their weeks. And then I started to get a little frustrated because sometimes a play would go well, then other times the set would fall down or somebody would forget their lines. So somebody was like, why don't you just film it? That way, once it's right forever. So I bought my first camera with the help of my parents when I was 12, and that's when I really started falling in love with filmmaking. Then I went to NYU and studied directing and producing there, and my first job right out of college was advertising, actually. So I got hired at an ad agency doing an internship there, and so I started off my career doing producing commercials, and I got a couple on the Super Bowl and worked for all these different companies, and then I transitioned more into just doing what I really, really love, which was making actual films.
That's great. So now you guys are talking about how your first job went. Is there anything that you learned during working at that job that you remember to this day? Something that really stuck with you?
I think with my first job, what I learned is just really kind of being, which sounds crazy, like, so for me, not being in film or going to school for film, I went and got my MBA, and I was in corporate. So I think for me, I was going through that imposter syndrome. So it was like, oh, I have my degree, but now I'm in film. So one of the things I learned is really just bringing your authentic self. And so for me, what that was, I had passion for film. I didn't study film, but I had a passion for it. And so what I brought to the table was my expertise on the business side of how do you sell it, how do you build community. And so in doing that, Kickstarter campaign, I had the skill set that I brought that was definitely an asset to it. And so I think after I got out of my mind, it was like, oh, you have this, you love film. How do you want to see film? How do you reach out to the audience? I am the audience. So that's, I think, was the first thing, just really, accepting what your skill sets are and not comparing them. And once you do that, you're bringing your experts, to that project.
I learned so many things in the beginning. I think the thing that really resonates with me is I ended up surrounding myself with people who I trusted and who I implicitly knew were smarter than me in various ways. And I continue to do that, and I continue to rely. Theater is very much filmmaking, a lot of the arts are collaborative arts. Theater requires you to show up in person over and over again together to make the thing, and then the audience shows up to watch the thing with you. So I just realized the value of the people that were around me in every single day and every single moment. If I trust them, if I lift them up, if I find out what they're great at, good at, what gets them up in the morning, what they're passionate about, then it radiates through the whole piece. There were moments when I put together a project or we were working on something, and I was stepping back and I was watching it and I was thinking, oh, like, something doesn't, there's like a weird fog over this, or it's like a little off color and I can't tell why. And 9 times out of 10, and again, you sort of have to get through it to realize this, it's that there was something about the group of people where that trust wasn't inherent, and where maybe an ego was sort of like overstepping or something like that. So I guess just knowing that the chemistry of the people around you can really make or break the thing, make it great, and just continuing to live by that rule.
So my first job, I ended up staying there pretty much for like eight years. And what it taught me was basically how to put a professional touch on my films that I still keep to this day, because it was advertising. So we're making 30 seconds, almost mini films, but we're doing it for these big corporations. So you have to like be very, very buttoned up. When you do that, I learned how to do things like do a formal estimate, how to competitively bid, which means that you look at if 3 directors want to work on your project, because as a producer, my job is to hire the crew, right? So different people present to you for your project. If I was shooting something for CoverGirl, I'd be looking for a different director than if I was shooting something for DirecTV, which is more action-oriented, right? So it taught me how to like look for what I actually need. It taught me how to competitively bid, because if 3 different beauty directors were pitching me, I have to see how much does this one cost, how much does that one cost, how much does that one cost. Taught me how to do schedules. So it taught me a lot of things that if I had just gone straight into independent films, I might not have had the same polish, if that makes sense.
That's a good point, yes.
And it taught me a big thing about how to pitch myself, because like, let's say we were doing a commercial for CoverGirl, they're not just gonna give me $1 million to do the commercial and be like, okay, go figure it out. But you have to come to them and tell them why this commercial is gonna be good for them, how much you think it could boost their sales. So, and that's another part that's that I've taken into my independent films. When I need to convince an investor that this film is going to be good, I have to know how to pitch the film and pitch myself. And so those like things from working in the more corporate side really stick with me, and I still stick with them to this day. And also how to run a set what's the right way? Legally or union-wise.
Yes.
So like, there are certain things when you're doing it for corporations that you have to follow certain rules. People have to eat after 5 hours. You can't keep people working for more than 12 and stuff like those kind of things. Independent films kind of bend the rules, but because I've learned to do them the like formal way, when I do my independent films, people are like, "Oh, this is nice," you know. So those are the things I learned from working in my first job. Yeah.
So what was the challenges that you guys had faced so far, and what have you learned from them?
Challenge.
There's probably a few.
Yeah.
Yes. But as far as like the biggest ones, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, things can be really daunting. At this point, what are some of the larger challenges you faced in your careers?
I was speaking to this a little bit before. Theater, without trying to overgeneralize, but it is a very antiquated art form. It's lasted thousands of years, but it's also still here, so there's something really incredible about that. But that antiquated nature of it makes its way into the power structures and into the ways in which we are even, implicitly told that this is how it has to be made. These are the people that make the decisions and why, and it feels very immovable because of this sort of like far-reaching, deeply rooted, like the first sort of big literary like art form of the Greeks, and it just it feels very overwhelming. So I think if I had to put an umbrella over all of the sort of small micro challenges that I run up against in my career every day, I think that antiquated like structure of making theater is something that really makes it difficult to get work done sometimes, or get the job that you feel you deserve, or to speak up about something even though there might be 4 or 5 people who disagree with you. It just feels very heavy, if I could be honest. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest challenge, and it's a constant challenge, is film is a lot about, I've learned, it's a lot about who you know. And just trying to get in the door. Like, you could have these great ideas, but my uncle is not Steven Spielberg or anything. So like, to just get in the door of some of these big film companies, because I'm in the process of pitching a TV show right now, and to just get in the door at CBS is harder when you don't like know somebody. And so that's the hardest part of just like getting your foot in the right place. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say, as a producer, I would say the biggest challenge has been fundraising, raising money. And as I was sharing, I started off with doing crowdfunding on Indiegogo and Kickstarter. And so they were smaller projects, the shorts. And so I think the first project we were asking for like $4,000, and we moved up to $16,000. Then there was a theater project that we worked on, and we were asking for $100,000. And so I would say the fundraising has been tough, because especially on indie projects, you pretty much find, and even in doing like crowdfunding, that your friends and families are the people who support you first, which is great. But guess what? When you do the next project, you have to build your community. So I think in that, finding the funds, and to your point about how do you pitch this story. And so I find when you have a clear, like, image of what you're doing and how that tagline of how your film or theater project fits, that it's easier to find the right people who want to be a part of your project. And in that, when you do the fundraising, it doesn't stop at you have the money. It's also building that community, having a relationship with them. Because honestly, sometimes when you have your first couple projects, they don't get their money back. But you want them to feel like they're part of your community, your film community, your project. So in that difficulty, once you get the money, continue to build that relationship and community and help them feel like they're part of the project.
That's great. Do you mind if I ask one? Yeah. So, I work in career development here at the school, and we always try to stress to the students, and most of the students here are like 18 to 23, 24-ish ballpark, networking. It's so important on so many levels.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people do not have an innate thing with when, you know, as far as being like affable or outgoing and being able to talk to people. So and as far as like how you guys might have dealt with, like, you know, some people have maybe it's anxiety, maybe they're just not super sociable. How do you deal with that stuff? I mean, we all have struggles with our own, you know, self-awareness and things like that. So what some advice you would give to them about like the importance of networking, and B, how to get over some of those like social humps?
And networking is important. Think about it as relationship building. And so before I started in film, again, I talked about being in business. So I had to do a lot of career fairs where I'm going. And so I remember like being at one career fair, and I was in a line of 20 people, and everybody's like, okay, this is what I do, and this is the job I want. And I was like, okay, how can I engage them differently? So I would, you know, ask them what they were doing, what they were looking for, but try to have some kind of connection with them to get their name. So then you get the card and you follow up. So in that sense, in going to career fair, that's kind of how I looked at it. I wouldn't start off, I would introduce myself, but really engaging them in what they do, because people like to, you know, kind of share what they're doing. And I would say on the film side, you know, we do a lot of, you know, networking, but what's great is like, again, New York Women in Film and Television, organizations that fit you. They're screenwriters organizations, they're film organizations. But what has helped me in my career as a consultant has been at film festivals. So I go to Sundance. I think I've been January with my 9th year. And every time I go to Sundance, I'm building my community. And now as you keep going, you see people that you know. I generally come out of Sundance with 3 to 5 different consulting gigs. So don't just kind of do organizations. Think about film festivals. So if you're into animation, go to Animation Film Festival. If you're into what's going on with drones, like find that niche for you and go there, and automatically you feel comfortable in what you love and what you're passionate about, so you meet people and just talk about it that way.
Yeah, I have to agree. Sometimes I think about, I could write a book called The Introverted Director because we sort of have this archetype in our mind, right, of a director who's like very loud and very social and very engaging and very, you know what I mean, and is sort of like always this sort of nucleus in the room that everything is centered around. And that's very much not my personality, but networking is very much a part of the job, especially as a freelance artist. And some of the things that I've found to be useful for myself, and some of the best advice that I've gotten, is to, again, seek out the kind of art that you are interested in working on or around, or the places, the theater companies that are making the things that just like make your heart tick, you know what I mean? And then go to those shows, go to those openings, even if you know no one, just sort of stand around and observe, and if you're going enough, conversations will come up because you'll talk about the art. The art is the way in to the conversation that would have otherwise felt awkward, of like, I'm just introducing myself to a stranger and I don't have anything to say besides how's the weather. So if you have the in with the art, it's great. The other thing that I would recommend is that I've kept a spreadsheet for, I think it's about 7 years long, but I wish that it was longer, of anytime I get a playbill, a program, when I go see a show, I write down who the director was, who the actors were, who the designers were, and just like a little summary of the play so I can remember, because who can remember? And so then I see these people coming up again and again sometimes, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just crazy about that sound design. Every time I see that sound designer in working on a piece, I go nuts for it. And so suddenly I have a job pop up and I need a sound designer, and I find a way to reach out to them. So just like not expecting yourself to have like a memory of gold and making notes and keeping notes for yourself throughout your career.
Yeah, what both of them said is completely what I was going to say. So, I mean, I could sometimes get kind of shy in a room of people that I don't know, but what I've told myself is people are just people. Like, everybody's just a person. It doesn't matter if they're this big CEO or if they're the PA. Like, people are just people, and if they're at that event, they're probably there to network anyway. So don't be shy to go up and talk to them. And one of the biggest tricks that I've picked up, and it's kind of about what the Rosalind said, the trick is people love to talk about themselves. Oh my gosh, they love to talk about themselves. One of my friends did this trick one time where he went to an event with his wife, and he was like, okay, I'm going to go around and I'm going to talk to people, but I'm never going to say anything about them, about myself. I'm just going to let them talk.
Yeah.
And he said when he got home, like, or the next day, so many people had called his wife and
sure.
told him,
Yeah.
your husband is so great. Man, he is just so
Yeah.
nice, when he didn't say anything about himself. He just let them go on and on.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, you know, you find the common ground in the conversation, and then you just go from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're such in like a me-centric universe right now, too.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to make that disconnect, you know? And it is the importance of listening to what other people have to say as opposed to what is the next thing I'm going to say
Right.
is such a
Exactly.
big thing. And I think especially for younger people, it's hard to understand that. in the
Do
beginning.
not look at your phone during a conversation.
Yes.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
don't
And I will
do
say
that.
too, if you are that shy person, I would say make it a goal or make it a game, as we talked about, right? It's great to ask them stuff, but what I would do, I'm like, especially when you start going to a lot of events, what am I getting out of this event? Am I going to support a friend? Am I going to learn something? And I'm like, I'm going to get 3 new cards. I'm going to get 3 new cards. And so the first one is kind of hard, and you look up and you're like, you have 10 cards, but I'm like, I cannot leave. Cannot leave here. And that happened the other night. I was at a NIWIF event, and I was like, and I walked out, and I actually came back and went downstairs and found out about a cool new program. And so most of the people in the room I knew, but I end up going back and speaking to the speakers and have like a great new contact. So I think if you just say, hey, maybe 1 if you're really shy,
Yeah.
but at least try to get 3.
And if I could just add, follow up. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had a coffee with a young director or met someone at an event, and then I never heard from them again. And also to flip the script, the amount of times that you know, just that, because I feel much more comfortable in email conversation. It's so much easier for an introvert to email you. And so getting home from the event or something the next morning, getting to sort of like suss out your thoughts, compose a thoughtful email and send it off, even if it's just, hey, so nice to meet you. Thank you for saying X, Y, and Z. Hope we run into each other soon, or I'd love to buy a coffee, or whatever it is. Just do it.
Now, Kate, I know you touched upon being overwhelmed previously. Was there any point in your life where you felt discouraged or felt as though you were going to give up at one point?
Yes.
Yeah, all the time.
Pick one.
I can name 2 moments that stick with me. You know how sometimes things kind of stick in your psyche a little bit, that I've worked through. And since this is a panel for women, I'll speak about 2 moments where I felt it was specifically about myself as a female director. I was a young director starting out, and I was working on a play, and it was not a new play. It was a very old play. It was a play that a lot of people have seen, and I was working with a producer who was a young man he was younger than me, even still, and he said to me, you know, you're like a baby bird who, when you push them out of the nest, you think they're going to crash, but at the very last second they fly. And I think it was maybe meant to be a compliment, but it was a horrible thing to say. And so I immediately, you know, and so I immediately was like trying to self-correct, and I spent a lot of years feeling like like I needed to change my personality somehow. Anyway, going through all of that, and eventually letting all of that go, and ending up where I am today, thankfully. But that was a very discouraging moment. Another discouraging moment was when I was talking to another female director who was a gatekeeper of sorts at a theater that I had really admired and wanted to work at. And she said to me, when I was coming up, nobody helped me, no women helped me, so I don't feel responsible to help women who are younger than me.
That's a
Which
tough
is,
one.
yeah, and when I heard that, I was also like, people really say that? I thought that was, and so that was tough, and so I really felt like there weren't going to be any inroads for me as an artist. But there's a lot to be said about proving something wrong, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, this obviously is a panel for women. I want to your people. But I mean, what are some challenges that you've faced specifically as a woman in the industry? I mean, entertainment, music, film. I mean, obviously a lot of it's very male dominated. The challenges you're going to have are going to be different. So what were some things that you faced that you?
I think equal pay is the first thing that
I'm
comes.
sure.
Yeah.
Equal pay, and also, being passionate about a project and seeing men on a project kind of being able to express all kinds of emotions, anger, but a woman, if you're passionate, it's like, you're angry. Well, no, I'm also passionate. So I think the perception of being a strong woman, knowing what you want and being direct, because I am very friendly, but when I get to my business, I'm about my business. So I find that people go, oh, that kind of, so having, I found that being challenging, having kind of different roles for men and women and equal pay. I remember one time just kind of talking to some of my male friends. I'm like, the next time I go in negotiation, I'm just going to throw something really wild out there. And I threw what I thought was wild. It was so very conservative. They said yes too fast, and I was like, oh. So I'm like, okay, now you need to do research. Now you need to do research and talk to people who are open to that. And so I don't think it's about, competition in that sense, but really, you know what your worth is. And so whether it's a nonprofit, it's indie film, it's corporate, it's a Hollywood film, do your research and go in there and negotiate. And sometimes it's not the money, it may be the title, it might be, the credit, but at least kind of figure out what are the things that you want that will make you happy.
Yeah. I've been relatively lucky in terms of being a woman in this industry. When I got into advertising, actually a lot of the producers there were women. As I've been doing my independent films, I work with this kind of one group of friends that were all the producers on the film. One of them was actually a professor here. And so we all have our strengths as producers, and I use my my girl powers, I guess you could say, as one of the female producers, where they often, when something was challenging, when they needed someone to kind of like go in, they say, bring in the puppy dog eyes tip. Like when they're like, we need to get this location, let's say it's a gym, and the person wants to charge us $5,000 and we only have $2,000, right? They're like, okay, Tiff, they will say no to all of us because we're these like rough guys or whatever. But if you go in and you ask nicely, bring the puppy dog eyes, and I'm always able to I'm able to get some deals. I wouldn't be flirting or whatever, but it's just like, I put a little sugar on it that they can't put on. And so, because of that, and I feel like the guys that I work with have respected me for that. And just like Rosalind said, I go on set and I'm about my business, and I haven't really, knock on wood, noticed the challenges, or maybe I've just make myself immune to them. I don't know, but it's been okay so far.
I think a lot about the differences between, when a job is a domestic job, like taking cooking, for example, it's very much considered a woman's job. But once you move into the professional field, like a chef is generally, it's a very male-dominated field. And I think of that in terms of directing, like women, like little girls, like a lot of us played with dolls growing up. We colored pictures, we're making visual stories, that's what directing is. And we're taught to sort of like play story time and create and all of these things. And then as soon as you move out of that domestic sphere, it becomes a male-dominated field. And I don't know what the solution is to that, just to say that I think there is something inherent between trying to let go of a system that wants to keep us sort of like nuclear domestic people, women in the world, as opposed to professionals in our field.
That's a good point. When I was at a tech company, I remember being at an executive suite, and I was actually managing it as the marketer, and I didn't realize that I was just in the suite, and so one of the account managers was like, I'm just coming to check in on you. And at that point, it was like 25 seats, and it was all men. And I was like, oh, I'm good, but he checked in on me. And in that sense, being in tech, and I realized that, and I was like, so I mean, we would have 1 or 2 women, and so after that, I started developing a program where we would try to incentivize or find women executives. So it was great that I had men who were open to that and making sure that I was okay. But I'm like, yeah, I need you guys to work harder and get women executives in here, and they supported that. And so, you know, as you said, it's not all like there are people who are good. You can have some good experiences, 100%. And people who support you and kind of notice you're the only woman in the room, you're the only person of color, and you know they're supporting you. So, but I think it's also I try to take on that. Oh, let's diversify this a little bit.
Definitely. And I know, I'm just remembering what Tiffany said about her puppy dog face. Are there any other skills or qualities that you have that you think make you successful in a way? And what did you learn versus what do you already have?
I definitely think my business background definitely helps me. I also worked at a film festival, and I remember coming in, and it was when the guy, he was like, oh, you're going to come in as an intern, and we're only giving you $20. Oh, no, we're going to come in as an intern for 3 months. We'll see. And after a week, he came to me and he was like, you're actually working, and you're actually have in 1 week kind of like looked at our books and kind of found issues. He's like, I don't have a lot of money, but I can pay you $20. So even though I signed up and said, okay, I will work for 3 weeks as an intern free, from me just being serious and doing the books and doing the accounting for him, he found value in that. And so that definitely helped me, my business sense and marketing, that has helped me in that. And to your point too, and Tiffany, you were talking about professionalism. When I first came in on some projects, people are like, oh, you're kind of doing too much. And I'm like, no, I want to, this is the schedule. I want everybody to have visual what's going to happen and the steps, and I want to have the contracts ready. And they were like, we've never had this before. And even some of the social media marketing campaigns I did, when I do my proposals, I actually talk about what some of the deliverables are. And people are like, we're not used to seeing this for marketing. Isn't marketing just oh, we get 1 million people? Well, I don't know if you're gonna get 1 million people now, but I can tell you these are some of the deliverables, and these are some of the things that we can increase and build your community. So I definitely think having that business and working in corporate has definitely helped me on the set.
I think I've heard people tell me, and I think a lot of what I've learned about myself as a director is come from reflections from people I trust, is that I'm an extraordinary, calm, even-keeled person, even in the face of crisis. Crisis meaning something going on with the project, not sort of greater world crisis.
It's good to clarify.
Yeah, well, and that I just have a really cool head. I have a really cool head. I think I was born with some of that. There's something about personalities in that way, but I also have honed a lot of that. I've taken note, I've taken stock of the times when I've worked with people who are explosive, who exaggerate problems for no reason, who tend to scoop up all the attention in the room. And I just have found that A, the project suffers, and B, they don't necessarily work very much anymore once people figure out that is the kind of personality that might be dominating the project. So I have just found that being even-keeled has gotten me very far in this industry, and I've earned a lot of respect, and a lot of people, when you're walking into the room and you are the quote-unquote authority as the director, when people feel comfortable and they feel that you're calm, they're calm, and then the work can get done. So.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on you with that, because if you're the producer, you're the top person on set, right? And so you have to be calm. There's one of my favorite pictures I keep on my phone. It's a meme of this dog. He's sitting there, the whole room is on fire. He's like, this is fine. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken, because there's always a fire on set, right? But everybody is going to take their cues from you. If you as a producer you're freaking out, everybody else is going to freak out. So that's one of the things. Everybody's always like, Tiff, you're so calm. Everything's okay? Like today, this project I'm working on, we were supposed to go to Cannes at the end of the month. And I just heard this morning that it was canceled because of the coronavirus. And I was like, this is fine. we're going to figure something out. It's okay. To be honest, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Sure.
But we'll figure it out. So it's that calmness because you reassure everybody else.
Yeah.
The other thing is my ability to kind of stay humble with it too, because sometimes I have a really big budget and I'm able to hire like everybody and hire caterers. Other times I'm like, I'll make the breakfast. You know, you just got to do what you have to do to get it done, and you can't have. No matter how big you get, you can't have an ego about it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think is my skill is that I try to have a respect for everybody that is on my set. You could be the person that is the PA, or you could be the person that is this big name director, but everybody has a role. And you know, one of my things is that I respect you no matter who you are, because everybody brings something of value. And that's something that I wish some people in the corporate world would understand, because some of my old bosses would be like, oh, this executive's coming today, be on your P's and Q's. And you're like, no, you're supposed to be on your P's and Q's all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
So I think those are the three. And the ability to multitask. That's something you definitely need.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk?
Yes, go ahead.
So I was actually speaking to Erica Huell before we started, and
Yeah.
she was, and it's a question for all of you, but I was speaking to Erica, and she mentioned specifically you with a new project you were working on
Yes.
and struggle. So how do you guys, when you do have a new project, I mean, there's got to be a myriad of issues that pop up. It's a new thing, it's a fresh thing, it's a different approach. So maybe you can give an example of what you were speaking about with Erica, and then you can each talk about, you know, new projects, new struggles that come along with that.
Yeah, so I'm working on this TV pilot right now. It's a 30-minute TV pilot called The System, and it's about what happens when the drug war seeps into the suburbs. And it's about how the police target minority kids for the same things that other kids do as a way to get them into, quote unquote, the system, right?
Wow.
So the struggles that are happening right now is trying to get it sold, basically. It's got picked up by a small network, but we're trying to get it to like a bigger network like Netflix or CBS, or we've pitched it to all those places. So far, nobody has picked it up yet. So the struggle is just getting it out there, and you just have to keep going, because you're going to hear 100 no's before you hear that one yes, and that one yes is all you need to like make it big, and you just can't let those no's deter you. You have to be confident in what you're doing. You have to know that you've put your all into something and that it's a good product, and you just go out there and sell it, and somebody's going to be smart enough to realize it.
That's great advice.
I'm thinking of an example. Let's see. So, well, there's something about the struggle of theater that is interesting, because theater is typically, I don't want to say, it's kind of bottom of the barrel in terms of like entertainment investment. And it doesn't make far as much money. It is less accessible. There are X, Y, and Z issues with it. It's an incredible art form, but there's a constant push and pull with like resources. You need real estate to put on a piece of theater. You need to be able to get people in a room, and not to mention all the other elements that go into it. So that when you're first putting on a project, let's imagine that in some fantasy world you've managed to secure a location to perform in, and the money in order to do so. The next challenge that I am currently running up against is this thing called sort of like the development cycle of new plays, which is that in order for a new play to get produced in a meaningful way, in a way that like you would go to this theater and see something and say, oh, I feel like I saw that play and everything the playwright intended, and I can have X opinion about it. In order for that to happen, right now, the play has to go through, I say has to, no one is dictating this, it's just what everyone's doing, it's just the norm, is going through all of these like workshops and readings and more workshops, being bounced around different theaters across the country, cast after cast after cast. This process can sometimes take up to 2 years in order to then premiere in New York City or another big theater city like Chicago. And so currently there's a play that I've been with a playwright on we've been working together since 2017 on this play, various workshops and things. And we're just now slotted in at Manhattan Theater Club. And it's a really interesting thing because this play is a very exciting project, but now it feels like it's been a little overdeveloped. Like, the more opportunities that you have to showcase something that is a work in progress, the more opportunities that you have to pull it apart from the thing that originally made it great. All of the opinions start seeping in. Every single theater has its sort of like, wants to have its little hand, its little form around it, and it's almost not recognizable anymore. So her and I are working on how to get sort of back to that beginning place. But it's challenging, and it's a sort of strange cycle that I'm not quite sure how we got into, except for maybe that we just don't have the money to produce new plays. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so I am working on a feature. I actually came in the middle of the feature. They had filmed maybe 18 months before I came on board. And so I came on board when they were doing some reshoots. And I came in as an associate producer. And we were, doing reshoots. We were editing it. And we were really trying to get in for a lot of the big festival dates like Sundance and Tribeca. And so we did get to those festivals and submit them. We did not get accepted into any of the festivals. But the great thing about, the good thing that came out of that we were able to get notes from some of the festivals. And so during the last year, we have been raising money to do reshoots, and so now we're targeting to do that in the summer. So I guess for me, the challenge was for me to come on the project where the project was ongoing. I was the new person on the project, but I think what really helped is that we have a very strong producer team, and so working and also being able to raise money, I'm now a co-producer on the project. So that's exciting, and we're hoping to shoot, and we're hoping this time by next year it's in theaters. And I will say another project that I worked on for a while, I came on for this short that was about sex trafficking, and we were able to get into the New York Television Festival 3 years ago. And what I really loved about this festival is that they have developers that come and they talk about what they're looking for. So they have pitch sessions, and so they come for 30 minutes. They get on the stage and they say, "This is what we're looking at Lionsgate. This is what we're looking at Lifetime TV. This is what we're looking at FX." And so it really helps you to develop your pitch. So we got meetings and everything. And so the year after we were in that, we got meetings and we were like, this is exciting, but things would say, every time we thought we'd get a deal, something happened. Well, now I would say for the executive producers, they've been doing a really great job. So on that project, I was the marketer, not a producer. And so they just got their funding, and hopefully they will be filming this summer. So those were two projects, a feature and a short that has now been over a 3-year period. So sometimes when you see things, you're like, oh, it's like happened all of a sudden. No, a lot of people are working in the background for years on either script development or projects. So I think you just have to realize this is a project you want to be on the long haul. But what really made it was the team. It's a really great team that was focused and really just kind of found the right way to get these projects going and get the funding.
Good luck to all of you guys.
Thank you.
So what piece of advice would you give to young women who are interested in being in the same field as you are?
Just have tenacity and endurance. Sometimes I feel like if I can just outrun everybody, I'll make it. But I mean, to some extent, that's true. But just to I think maybe Tiffany said something about this a little while ago. That we need to just not let the little bumps in the nose and the nose and the nose get us down, which is incredibly difficult, and especially in an industry that is comparative. And we live now in a time where, like, you can see how everyone is doing all the time on the internet. And not only that, but you can see their version of how they want you to think they're doing all the time on the internet, which is not, that's not the truth. And so just, if you need to turn that off for a while, I suggest turning it off. If that really hits you in a deep way and you're feeling discouraged, shut that out and think about how you can just keep having the endurance to do what you love and not stop.
My advice would be just do it. Just just start. I guess we're in the same generation. I think I'm an elder millennial.
I'm also an elder
millennial, but
yes,
as millennials, our generation has, in terms of the film industry, we have a lot more opportunities than any other previous generation in terms of that we can get DSLR cameras for like $500 at B&H or whatever. You can shoot a movie on your phone, So not only can you shoot something yourself, you can actually market it yourself by putting it on YouTube and putting it on Facebook. The downside of that is that everybody's doing it, so you need to make sure your quality is top notch so that you stand out. But in terms of like the roadblocks that were in previous generations where you had to get funding before you can make a film, you can just go ahead and make it. So there's really is nothing stopping you from jumping into this industry. I still think, you guys are in the right place in terms of getting your training, so you know the formal way to do things. But in terms of actually making a product, there is nothing stopping you. We are in the best generation for doing that. So my advice is just do it. Like, just get into the industry. That's
Firmly
it.
agree. That's awesome.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, I definitely agree with what all this has been said, but I also think it's good to do it, but also to build your tribe, to build your community. And I can tell, like, you guys, all of you guys are like multi-talented. You don't do just one thing, but it's good when you're starting to do that, but don't try to do everything. If you're really good at directing and producing and you can edit a little bit, do you have a good friend, or reach out and find an editor? So I would just also say, definitely build your tribe. And then I think I always kind of joke, I'm probably on like my third, fourth career. Don't be afraid to say yes to something that you never even like had an idea about. I was like film. I wanted to do film, and then an opportunity came up for me to be a marketing blogger and doing PR for theater, and I love theater. But I honestly didn't go for it because of theater. I went for it because the person that I really admired who did film and theater, I was like, oh, I would love to work with this person. So if this is the part, I work with them. And I think just being open to new ideas that you might get an opportunity, and just kind of say, well, that's not really what my field is. If you're really focused, that's great. But I think sometimes saying yes and being open to new opportunities, you kind of feel like that might be your niche.
Sure.
You want to ask one more? Maybe we'll get some questions from the audience.
Yes, I have this last question. How do you deal with negative comments about being a woman in the industry?
Don't give them your energy. Just don't even, whatever. When people say negative comments, it's really more about them than about you. It's like, I don't want to blast anybody, but I've had a supervisor in one of my old corporate jobs when I was just getting in there all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I think I still have the bright eyes and bushy tails, but I was just getting into it, and I had a meeting with one of my supervisors where they had these meetings every like 6 months or so, where like your supervisor is supposed to be like your mentor and tell you, you tell them your goals and they tell you what you can do to like get to that goal. And so apparently my supervisor was also someone who wanted to be a producer director working at in this advertising agency. And so, but her title was exec producer of the commercials, right? And so she was like, okay, so what are your goals for like the year? And I was like, well, I'm a producer, assistant producer. I was like, but by the end of the year, I want to be a producer / director. That's what I want to be here. And she was like, well, you know what? I've been here 15 years and I've never gotten that title, so let's change that goal. And if I didn't have a strong backbone, that could have crushed me, because this was someone who I'm looking up to, someone who I aspire to be like, you know, or kind of like. And so I was just like, okay, well, I see she's not going to be my advocate. And, you know, when it came time for me to leave my job, because I left advertising to do film full time, I told her that, hey, I'm leaving here. I loved working here, but I need to go pursue my dream. And she was like, you know, I admire that about you. I wish I could do the same thing, but I feel like I've let my dreams die.
Wow.
And so that's what I know. I hope she doesn't ever see this, because I don't want to blast her. And I actually ended up kind of consoling her and telling her, like, your dreams aren't dead. You're still alive.
Absolutely.
If you want to leave and
Right.
go and do what you want to do, then do that. And she was like, well, I have kids, but the point was, looking back now, she told me that thing more for her than for my own, like, to say anything about me. And I think negative comments in general more reflect on where that person is in their life than you. So I don't know, that's my advice. I just ignore it, because if
Yeah.
I would have listened to her, I wouldn't have pursued the rest of my dream.
That's great advice.
I found that a coping mechanism that I try to live by is to have, if something like that comes at me, to ignore it, and then to find an antidote that I can prescribe for myself. Sometimes it's complimenting another amazing woman in my life, or lifting them up somehow that day. Like, I try to do it almost immediately when I'm starting to feel the effects of whatever that is sink in. Sometimes it's, there's this amazing organization called the Kilroys, and they produce a book of plays written by women every single year, new plays. So sometimes I'll just flip through one of those and get excited about something in there. I mean, there are a dozen, you know, sometimes it's sitting down with a friend and just saying, oh, I'm feeling blah, blah, blah. Just like having a list of little antidotes that are like touch points with my true self, and that help me get out of that negative sort of like little voice in my head that'll say like, oh, this person was right, you didn't, you know, and hush that down and bring something positive in the day that it's happening. Yeah.
I would say that when that happens, I won't say it doesn't affect me, because it's kind of more of a pause, but at the end it fuels me. I've had it at one of my first jobs right after grad school, where I remember having a meeting, and I had a coworker pull me aside, and he just kind of gave me some points of all the things that happened in the meeting and what I said. And I kind of sat there and I was like, okay. And he was like, no, but you weren't bad, because he'd start telling me everybody else the things that they did wrong in the meeting. So I went home and I thought about the next day, and I called him out. I said, thank you so much for telling me that, because now I can be aware of it and actually, you know, help more when I'm presenting my report. And so it helped me, actually. And after that, I probably aging myself, but I started taking Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an organization where you become a member, but pretty much like every other month you have to present to this group. And so after that, like I took Toastmasters, and that like helped me learn how to like prepare your cards to speak. And I mean, I've spoken at tech softwares like in front of 400 people. And so I still get nervous, but that, by him saying that to me, I took it like I was offended at first, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make it better. So when I went back and thanked him, he was like, you know, he was kind of surprised that I thanked him. So I definitely think that you kind of just let it fuel you. And actually, especially you asked also as a woman, if I'm in a area where it's mostly male dominated or whatever, it makes me actually just kind of walk a little straighter, you know, stroll a little bit more. It's like, yeah, I'm here. So it fuels me.
Awesome. Do you guys have some questions for these ladies? Okay, can I actually give them the mic? That would be great.
Hi, I'm Ross Perlo Hansen. I'm a mass comm major. It's my last year. I'm graduating.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate all that you guys said. But I have like a multifaceted thing. I've been in film here. I've been in mass comm, not finishing that degree. So I have a lot of things I'm good at, like TV, radio, and again, like, you know, the film side, the directing, producing, anything. I've done a lot. I've been here for 5 years. So my question is, where should I, like, because I really want to be in maybe radio or TV, but how far should I go with saturating and looking for work in terms of, should I definitely go for the city? Should I try to go for a smaller market? How should I go about really making the most of my multifaceted skill set?
Well, I mean, you're here and near to New York City. Start here, get an internship, and just keep going from there. If you were doing something more like news, like my sister's a news reporter, then you kind of have to start in the small cities. But because you're here, I'd say get an internship in New York and go from there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have any experience in that market, but it feels like we sort of said this before, but having multidisciplined approaches to any and everything is a desirable thing in the hiring world, especially right now. So if you have a foot in somewhere with one thing, find ways in which you can get involved with other departments. And yeah, it doesn't feel like necessarily someone is looking right now for a new hire to have only one set of skills.
Yeah, I think that's great that you have like several expertise. I would say, you know, it's fortunate to be so close to New York, and we know in the next I think year or so we're going to have Lion Gates and Netflix here. So I would definitely say this is a good area since you're here. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't want to go to LA. And also, I'm not sure, I know when I started getting on LinkedIn maybe 8-10 years ago, it was more professional corporate, but I think now they're really trying to reach out to artists. So I think if you have like targeted like I just mentioned Netflix, if you have targeted corporate work that you want to do or production company, I would say go on LinkedIn if you are on there and just kind of reach out and try to ask for like a 15-30-minute Skype meeting. You know, definitely leverage your network, because I've had people say, hey, I see you're connected to this person, can you introduce me? That's a great way, you know, to just, and sometimes honestly, people, it's hard to meet up, but sometimes people will do a 15, they will do a 30-minute, and you be very specific about what you want to ask them and what is your follow-up, right? We talked about follow-up. What is your ask? Because just doing that, and later on, if something pops up in their organization, they're like, oh, I remember I had this conversation and this person has the skill set.
I also have just one more quick question.
We gotta share with other people. Anybody else have a question? Last question?
Hi, I'm sorry I walked in late. My name's Emily. I'm a junior here at Five Towns. I originally was studying audio with music business, so I have a little bit of expertise in that, but I've been acting since I was a kid, you know, and here in the mass communication department, we do a lot of journalist-based stuff and that kind of media production. And with like old media, like, I mean, you said it yourself, you guys are like crowdfunding to get your own films produced. You know, you don't have to get one of these films produced for you. What advice do you have for content creators trying to, you know, release their stuff in a very saturated market and really make themselves different and be able to monetize off of said content?
My advice would first be to not think about the monetization of it as your first goal. I think the content that I tend to engage in the most, and maybe they're duping me, I don't really know, but is the content that feels genuine and authentic to what the person is creating or attempting to say or wants to say about themselves or the world around them. So I think keeping that as goal number one, you'll find that I feel that the resources will come to you, and the right resources will come to you as well, as long as you're staying true to that goal.
I would add really just trying out different platforms and to, you know, kind of understand on the different platforms, there may be a certain messaging that you want, but definitely like tailor them, customize them to the different platforms and see how you're building your community. And just really, I do agree too with the monetization, like you really want to get your content down and just try on the different platforms and see where you can build community. And from that, you know, maybe after that, you kind of want to focus on maybe 2 of those, and that you can grow your community, and once you grow your community, the advertisers and people are coming to you, you know, and then you can build that.
Exactly, and to piggyback on building your community, what you have to do, and this comes from my background in advertising, is you need to know your audience. You need to know who you want your community to be, and to try to reach them. Like if you want your community to be moms, right, then once you do your content, you reach out to like the moms Facebook groups or whatever. You have to know your community, you have to know your audience, you have to know when to find them. And the number one thing about getting people to watch your videos is you have to fulfill some type of need that they're looking for. You have to fulfill some type of problem or something. Like if I'm looking how to create a dish, right? I'm gonna look for that cooking video. So you have to figure out like who your audience is and what do they need, and then the eyeballs will come from there. Yeah.
Okay, my time was off. We actually do have time for one more question. Anybody have one more question? Oh, back here. Actually, here. You can take this one. That's okay.
So in the last panel, we talked about elevator pitches and what the panelists wanted from them. So I want to know, when people are coming up to you as producers and directors, what do you not want from someone's elevator pitch?
What do you not want?
Oh, hold on.
So I would say, can you get me a job?
Yeah.
Because I have produced pitches, and when we have asked different network execs to come, one of the things we're asking is you really want them to give you feedback, right? So, and again, honestly, it's about relationships. So if they love what you're pitching, then they will give you feedback, and you can develop that relationship and follow up and and sometimes it's good, like I try to quarterly reach out to certain people I want to talk to, and reach out to them, or maybe it's per year, right, once a year, but saying like, can you get me a gig, can you get me on this project, I want to work with you, like saying, you can tell them how you admire them in certain parts of the work, but just asking for a job is tough.
Yeah. What I don't want to, I won't say what I don't want to hear. What I don't want to feel is that you don't even know what you want, right? That's what I don't, that's like, if I have to figure out like, what are you trying to tell me? Because I got a whole lot of things going on right now. And so if that's kind of wasting my time, So if you come up to me and you're just like, I just want to know about film. I'm like, okay, well, where do we start? Or like you usually just say, I just want a job. Okay, what do you do? So like at the end of the day, if your elevator pitch, I just don't want to waste my time. Time is your most valuable asset. That's the one thing you can't get back. So make sure whoever you're reaching out to, that you're not wasting their time.
Yeah, similar to that, just to know who you're talking to also in terms of their background and what they can or can't maybe do for you, or what their interests are, and if their interests align with yours, or values, or projects. The blanket statement of I really want to work in an off-Broadway theater doesn't work, because they all do different things and they all have different programming, and why are you approaching this one about this thing? So always knowing that going forward.
Yes, that could get so annoying.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. So one of the things I do for the most of the week is I work at this audio studio, and we're expanding to do more TV work. And sometimes people will call, young, eager college students, just be like, hey, I want to work at your studio. And they have no idea what the studio does, and no idea what they can offer to the studio. So I would say, when you are calling someone and you want someone to be a mentor for you, the first thing is do your research on the place that you're calling. Find out what you like about that place, because that's a great conversation. Just like how people like to talk about themselves, they love to hear what you like about them too. And then the last thing is you have to show what you can offer to that person, because you can still offer something. You have to show what you can offer to them, because then they're like, oh, he can edit? I need an editor, or something. And that's like the 3 stages of your own elevator pitch to some type of company or executive.
Well, we actually are out of time. Thank you guys so much. Please give them a round of applause, everybody. You guys did an awesome job. Thank you. And also our moderator, great job, buddy. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You did a great job.